If we are not accepted and loved by the tribe, we will be cast out into the wilderness and we will die because we have safety in numbers.
Wow. This is already really good.
Why do you have this disease? Because you've got these symptoms. Why do I have these symptoms? Because I've got this disease. It's a closed loop system.
I guarantee you I didn't script any of this. Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in to another episode on The Success Factor. I'm the host, Trent Christensen. In this episode, I had the opportunity to interview Amanda Kate. She's very positive, she's very happy, she's very peaceful, and she's very knowledgeable and experienced as it comes to trauma and healing from your past. With some of the trauma that she's gone through in her life 6+ years ago, it forced her to go and evaluate options for healing. And in this case, she landed on kinesiology. She's a certified kinesiologist, and she's helping people through all kinds of different treatment of symptoms that you're experiencing in your physiological being. She's an amazing speaker, super fun to listen to. It was super fun getting to know her all the way from Australia. I love what she's doing. And in fact, she was even able to help me live on this episode, and we recorded it with some of my crap that I've had. It was a pretty good test. We just, in the middle of the interviewing, I just said, let's do it right now. And she went through some questions and she went through some physical kind of pressure points with me. And I have to tell you, it worked. Like my friction, pain, and negative energy quickly went away. It was so cool. So I really hope you check out this episode with Amanda Kate. She's bigger than life, super powerful, great energy, and something that you can vibe with and you can learn from and you can incorporate to be able to figure out how to overcome some of your pain points in life that's being held up in your physiological being. Thanks for supporting the show. Go check it out. Have a good one, everyone. Hey, Amanda, how are you?
I'm really good. Thank you, Trent. And you?
Doing really good. What time is it down there, down south in Australia?
We're at 10:30
At 10
on
p.m.?
the day. No, 10:30 in the morning, the day after you are.
Okay, so it's Monday night for me at 5:33 p.m.
Yeah.
And so you're on Tuesday. That's cool.
Yes. Yeah.
That's okay. So Amanda, tell us about yourself. Like, give us a rundown of who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a kinesiologist, an archetypal life coach, a mother, a partner, a dog mom, all of the things. So wearing lots of different hats. I'm also an author. So I released my first book last February, which is called Divine Messy Human, a spiritual guide to prioritizing internal truth over external influence. So wearing lots of different hats.
Amanda, that's amazing. You sound very busy. How many children do you have?
I've got 2 kids. So they are 17 and 15. They're actually not kids anymore, are they? They're almost adults. So yeah, it's
Young
a
adults,
different
yeah.
phase of mothering.
Yeah, that keeps you busy. I have 5, so it keeps me busy. And it
Yeah.
is just crazy. It's just beyond crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I want to know how you got into kinesiology and what it is. Maybe you can touch on just high level summary of what that is. And then how did you get into it?
Yeah, look, it's a blend of the way we describe it is Eastern wisdom meets Western science. And so we're looking at working with the energy systems of the body to restore it to the innate healing capacity that our body has. The fact is that with modern life and modern food and our modern lifestyle, we ignore all of the signs that our body is telling us that it's not well. And all sickness, illness, disease, dis-ease within the body is caused by stress. So it's either physical, chemical, or emotional stress. And what we look to do as kinesiologists is diffuse the stress in the body and bring what's sitting in the subconscious into the conscious mind so that we can change the vibrational pattern and therefore change our behaviors, change our ways of reacting into responding. And basically just understanding our body and the way it's talking to us more. I don't think anybody finds things like kinesiology or coaching or any of those, healing modalities or healing arts without going through their own trauma. And realistically, that's how I found it. I had chronic fatigue back in 2013. And doctors were sort of fobbing me off, as a lot of women will understand. We tend to get that a lot when we go and see doctors. Is this, there's nothing wrong with you. You'll be fine here. And it was when a gynecologist handed me a script for antidepressants because he basically couldn't be bothered trying to work out what was going on and why I was suffering with my menstrual cycles 13 days a month. Um, there was
That's
just
insane.
this, oh, it was crazy. Um, it was this big fob off. And that's really when all these alarm bells started ringing in me going, there has to be an answer. I cannot be this unwell in my early to mid 30s, be suffering for almost half a month with my menstrual cycle. And it led me down the natural therapies path. And I guess one thing led to another. And I started to understand why I was getting so sick, why things weren't working. And eventually it led me, because I felt like I was having this nervous breakdown, it led me to getting a mental health plan and booking with a psychologist. But the psychologist couldn't get me in for a month. And she just said to the receptionist said to me, look, we've got a kinesiologist. Have you thought about something else? Just because you sound like you're under a lot of stress, we can at least get you in there and then you can work with the kinesiologist and the psychologist side by side. And that first session just changed my life. She said, "You have no idea how emotionally abused you are, do you?" And I was like, say more about that. And I could see it in a number of my relationships, but I didn't see it in my main one until sort of 4 months later. But within
Yeah.
6 months of my first kinesiology session, I was sitting in the classroom learning how to become one.
Wow. That's
Mm,
crazy.
yeah.
And so you really didn't even go back and do anything with the traditional or psychiatrist approach. So how many months or years have you been into kinesiology?
So I started my
Kinesiology, sorry.
yes, that's all right. I started my sessions at the end of April in 2015, and I started studying in the October of 2015. And I started my business in the November of 2016. So after I've been studying for a year, and then I was studying and building a business alongside each other.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing 6 years worth of study in 4 years because I fast tracked. I did my advanced diploma of kinesiopractic, which is, the extension of the diploma, another something, I can't even remember how many extra hours, 2,500 or whatever it is, extra hours. And just dove deep because the more I learned, the more I realized I didn't know. And it was just opening this door into the mind body spirit connection, into how our subconscious rules so much of our waking life, how our brain works, how our body physiology works, how our body systems respond to stress, like all of this stuff. And so it was getting into this really sciencey aspect of how our body works and how we're wired and how we're built, anciently to, be in tribes and to work that way and to listen to our body and to be in touch with the natural world. But then there was also this, I guess, esoteric aspect of it. And most of my physical illness was because of emotional and psychological trauma. And that to me
Wow.
blew my mind to think that my body was physically breaking down because of the distress I'd been through.
It's amazing how that works. I've
Mm.
experienced that myself,
Yeah.
seen it in other people close to me, previously close to me or whatever.
Mm.
And it's crazy how stress and anxiety just I look at it like a negativity.
Mm.
So you're creating and harboring that negativity, that negative energy, and
Yeah.
it's ruminating, it's hovering, it's not being depleted. And what that does, from my perspective, the way I look at it, at least from Trent's angle and Trent's mindset, is I feel like if that's in there, you're allowing it to absorb energy that's positive,
Mm.
and it can impact the outcome of your cells
Mm.
individually by the depletion of the proper new energy, if you will. And that's how I look at it.
Mm.
And I think it's weird.
Yeah. And Bruce Lipton's done this whole, field of study on it, epigenetics, and he looks at the way that the cells are, you know, programmed through our belief systems and how those belief systems help the cells express in different ways. And then how that can be passed on to our children, to our grandchildren, all of that sort of stuff, how it was passed on to us, and how that by changing our beliefs, by changing the way that we experience the world, we change ourselves at a cellular structure. And I felt the changes of that.
How effective is it? Like, what is the overall stats or like the research with the effectiveness of kinesiology?
Look, I wouldn't know exactly. I think again, like anything, it's subjective, isn't it? My subjective experience of the medical industry was that it failed me, that I was constantly being brushed off. Now, not everybody will have that subjective experience of the medical industry. I've also had times where it's worked really well for me. And I think it's the same with things like energy medicine, kinesiology, the somatic therapies, hypnotherapy, even. Your body will respond depending again on how much you believe in it for a start. Because if we're talking about the cells having those belief structures, if somebody believes it's a load of bullshit, yeah, it might work to an extent for them, but they're never going to get the full benefits of it because they're going to be questioning, well, does this even work? I guess it's the same way that the placebo effect works and
I
the
was just thinking
nocebo
that.
effect.
I just had that in my head. Like,
Mm.
it could be very similar to the placebo effect. If
Look,
not, go ahead.
there is definite changes that happen, and being somebody who can feel the energy, I feel the shifts within my body. I've felt the shifts within my life. I've seen the expressed version of what we've cleared. So, for example, there's been times that I've had a session and I'll come out feeling amazing, like all these cogs are being put together and I feel my body working differently. There'll be other times where I don't really notice a change, but all of a sudden, 2 or 3 weeks later, I'd go, hang on, I'm not doing that thing anymore, whatever it was, whether it be the negative self talk, whether it be the reactive, you know, or the reactive patterns or the triggering, or I'm not feeling the same activations in my body in stressful scenarios. And I look back and I'm going, oh, but we worked on that in my kinesiology session and now I'm noticing a difference 3 or 4 weeks
Uh,
later. And so I've got so many tangible results from myself and from clients. I mean, I went out to one the other day just to check on how she's going, and she's going, oh my God, the amount of times I think to how much you've helped me. Because it's not necessarily about, yes, we're balancing the body, we are balancing the systems, we are finding out what emotions are stuck in the body, what stories are linked to them, how that's
yeah.
creating all of these different areas of dis-ease within the body. And we're helping align the energy field. So if you think about your body as an orchestra and you've got some instruments that are flat, some are sharp, some are just not playing because they can't be bothered, some are trying to pick
Yeah.
up the slack and play all of the
Yeah.
parts. You know, when you think about your body when it's fully in balance, that orchestra is in tune and everybody's playing the part when it's supposed to, how it's supposed to, at the note it's supposed to, in the time it's supposed to. But when there's stress, that's not happening.
Yeah. You're out of balance.
Mm,
You've
yeah,
disrupted the harmony in your body
yeah,
and it's sequencing correctly. It's not
mhm,
equally weighted,
yeah,
weighting your overall demand and load on a daily basis.
yeah.
Someone's not performing. One of the pillars has fallen. Right. But here's the question for you. What is the technique that you take personally?
Again, I have to state it was 6 years worth of study, so it's not like I went on a weekend course. There was a lot of hours spent, probably around about 4.5 to 6,000 hours spent studying this. So again, there's a lot of complexity in that answer.
Of
What
course.
we use manual muscle testing, and people like Bruce Lipton, like Richard Gerber, Dr. Richard Gerber talk about it. There's a lot of different books on kinesiology and manual muscle testing. David Hawkins also used to use it. And it's where you are reading the tone of the muscle to be able to get the answer to the question that you're asking. So, say, for example, your whole body is an electrical system. So, when
Mhm.
we press down on the muscle that we're testing, whether it be an arm or a leg muscle or abdominals or neck, whatever those muscles are that we're testing for tone, if that electrical signal is interrupted because it's being stressed and that signal's not getting through clearly, then that muscle will give a weak tone. If it's not stressed, then that signal goes through clearly and the muscle will hold its tone. And so
Mm.
what we're looking for is a change from, and I don't tend to use the word, but the strong muscle test where the muscle is not moving, it's holding its tone, to a weak muscle test, which is the muscle saying, oh, that's stressful. And it's interrupting that clear signal. And so through that muscle testing and through the questions that we ask and through using what we call finger modes, which is like a menuing system on our hand, and then using emotion charts and all the rest of it, we can find what emotion is stuck there. We can find the causal time. When did that get stuck in your body and start creating this domino effect to today? And how do we pull that out by the root? So we're looking at when the seed was planted, why it was planted, how it was planted, what emotion it got stuck there with, what stories you then created around it,
How do
and
you
then
determine
shift
all
the
that?
operation.
How do you get all that information? That's a lot of information. I
Yeah,
mean, you gotta,
through
like,
muscle
decode
testing.
someone's brain.
Yeah, through
Just
muscle
muscle
testing.
testing?
Yep.
How would you know how
And
long ago it
asking the
happened?
questions. Because I could put in I can put in, we've got a mode called causal time. So I check for causal time and I count back from, today to whatever. I'll go, okay, what happened at 3? And somebody will go, we moved house or something. Okay, so was that stressful? Or do you think it would have been stressful for you as a 3-year-old to leave what you'd known and go, somewhere new or whatever it
Yeah.
is? Or they might go, well, my parents were going through a really tricky time and there was a lot of arguing, and what I say to them is you say the first thing that comes into your mind. So the hardest thing I've had to learn through kinesiology is to speak before I think. And
Mm.
because that initial bit, that initial reactive, oh, that's where the gold is because your subconscious knows. And hypnotherapists, I love this study. They said that if you go into the brain in the right way with hypnotherapy, say you were, I don't know, 3 years old and your mum dropped a vase on the floor, your brain in some part will be able to tell you how many pieces it broke into. Now, I don't know how well this study was done, but I'm like, that's pretty amazing because you think of how much we have to filter out to be able to
Mhm.
survive in this world. And they do a lot of that through NLP. It's something like we bring in 400 billion bits of information every second. So we have to have a filter because we cannot process that much information. So we chunk it down into bits. And those bits then get filtered through our life experience, through our belief systems, through, all of these different parts of ourselves, through our perceptions, through our projections, through our own life experience. And we bring in those parts. And that's where sometimes you can be having a conversation with somebody and you're like, are we having the same conversation here? Because you're both filtering it in such different ways.
This is incredible. Do you know the inverse of this from a causation perspective, the significance of certain type of events that people experience? And so I like one example, like
Mm,
how serious or what type of impact happens to your physiological being, and your nerve system and everything when you
mm,
experience deep abandonment or betrayal?
mhm. Yeah, well, absolutely. And Dr. Gabor Mate is incredible for this. So he's a trauma specialist and he's doing a lot of research around trauma. And, this goes back to our body's initial, I guess, reason for being. We are creatures who were born to be in tribes. Our whole way that we interact with the world is created through us wanting to be accepted and loved by our tribe. If we are not accepted and loved by the tribe, we will be cast out into the wilderness and we will die because we have safety in numbers. So obviously, this is going back to, tribal days. But if we got cast out and into the wilderness, we could not survive on our own. So even today, where we don't have that same fear, we are still wired the same. So if, we're a baby and we are crying for food, and of course, most parents got taught that control crying is the way and that babies go on your schedule and all this kind of stuff. We left our babies to cry. So they develop or can develop a thing of going, well, my wants and needs don't matter. And then what they do is they start to look for examples of my wants and needs don't matter. And you then put that into an adult brain where you're going through the world thinking my wants and needs don't matter. And you're gaining a whole lot of experience of that because that's what you're
Mm.
filtering into your brain. And I've lived that myself. My wants and needs don't matter. I need to please everybody else because I'm less worthy, you know. And so
Mhm.
when your nervous system then gets primed to look for that, you're constantly on edge. You're constantly in this fight and flight state of going, am I going to be
Yes.
accepted by the tribe or am I going to be cast out into the wilderness to die? And
I've
so,
experienced that personally. In fact,
yeah.
I'm experiencing that right now with, a certain relationship. So, yes, I totally get it. How do
Mm.
you what is the protection? What is the way to see it for what it is and start shifting your energy, shifting your focus, and get out of a self-protective mindset that is wrapped around people pleasing for a fear of abandonment or betrayal?
Well, again, this is one of those, multi-layered and very nuanced ideas because it will be different for different people. But in general, we cannot do the healing until we feel safe. So the number one thing that we need to do in any healing scenario is get somebody to feel safe. Not just safe, you know, I'm not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, but safe in terms of I am going to keep myself safe. I am energetically safe to be in my body. So part of the first part of our kinesiology balance is always to get the person energetically back in their body. So we do a number of what we call switches to make sure that energetically the person is actually present in this moment. And I've had
Mm.
sessions where it's taken me all session just to get somebody present in their body, which is
Oh,
crazy to think about. But when you're in that state, and it's taken, I've had practitioners where we've worked on that for a whole session for me because I haven't felt safe to fully inhabit my body. So that in itself can be a big process depending on what you've gone through. It can be a massive process to get you feeling energetically safe to be present. And then we've got to look at, our standards of behaviors, the boundaries we put in place, the triggers and activations. So we need to look at healing the inner children who were the initial part of feeling abandoned, of feeling rejected, and why then we're energetically welcoming that in now. So you can see it's not just one strand. And people come to me sometimes as a last resort going, I've tried everything else and they give me 1 hour to fix it all. And I'm going, mate, it ain't going to work because what you're
mm.
getting me to do is unpack 40, 50, 60 years worth of trauma. And you've given me an hour in which to do it. Hang on, you've been working with other professionals for 5, 6, 7 years and you expect me to do it in an hour. Like I'm good, but there's limits.
It's because there's unrealistic expectations in the world.
Mm,
People expect a magic pill. They expect to
yeah.
be able to spend, the more they spend, the quicker they think it should work. But
Mm,
that is absolutely a lie to ourselves
yeah.
because I have personally gone through 55 plus EMDR sessions in 2 years. I have personally gone to
Mm,
70 plus counseling sessions and have hired 3 different coaches and
yeah.
have met with 4 different doctors on 4 different disciplines to
Mm,
get me where I'm at today in 2 years. And
yeah.
I'm not even there yet. And I'm
Yeah.
still on this journey. And it is a huge amount of effort,
Mm,
increase in total spend, time, focus, commitment,
yeah.
dedication. And if
Yeah.
someone comes in and says, give me an hour, doc, you should probably just walk them out.
Yeah. Oh, and look, it ends up, I mean, I had a client only the other week and she's like, so am I fixed now? And I said, hang on, you've come for 3 sessions, not even close together. So we're only clearing like current stress, like just the little bit that you've collected since the last time. We're not going into the past stuff because you're not giving me the opportunity to. Now, if you really want to see results, then you'll need to, make a bit more of a dedicated effort the same way that you do currently with your naturopath, with your heart doctor, with this doctor, with that doctor, and I
Exactly.
mentioned all of the team she's working with. I said, you need to give me the same commitment that you're giving them, and we will get you off some of these medications because a lot of them are there not because you've got a disease, but because you are stressed. If we can clear that underlying stress, we can get you to health. And it frightened her off. And I went, that's fine. You're clearly not my client because it is a dedicated effort. I am God, years down the track. I think I first started dipping my toe in the water around the age of 32, 33. I've just turned 45. So you're looking at,
You don't look
what
45.
oh,
You look
bless
like
you, thank you.
37. Come on now, Amanda. Let's see that driver's license.
Well, I can tell you people said once I left my marriage, they're saying, "Every time, I see you, you look younger." And I went, "I lost 90 kilos." And
I
they'd be
lost a
like,
lot of weight
"What?"
too.
And then
Yeah.
they'd twig that and I'd say, "No, I left my marriage." And because again, I wasn't living with that day-to-day stress. And stress is the biggest thing that ages our body. It's the biggest thing that, they've actually proven that that is the biggest killer worldwide is stress. Like, we talk about blood pressure, high blood pressure as a disease. High blood pressure is not a disease. High blood pressure is a symptom. And it is a symptom of stress that's going on under the body. Because what happens when we're stressed, our body needs to pump blood to the arms and legs so that we can fight or run away. So if we can work out what that stress is that is keeping you in that elevated state, your blood pressure naturally comes down. But what we're
Mm.
doing is we're medicating these things as diseases when they're not diseases, they're symptoms of what's going on at a deeper level. And the thing with the medical profession that I personally have experienced, and not everybody does, and I'm not bagging out the medical profession because they have saved many people in my life's life. Like I'm saying, it is a very necessary profession. But when you look at, well, why do you have this disease? Because you've got these symptoms. Why do I have these symptoms? Because I've got this disease. It's a closed loop system. What we want to know is what are the switches that were flipped through stress to allow these symptoms to manifest in your physical body. That's what I want to know. And I want to go
That's
back and
that's
unprogram
incredible.
those stresses to be able to get you into a state of health.
That is so incredible. I mean, because that's the root of what EMDR is. That's the root
Mm,
of what LSD, the root of
yeah.
psychedelics or shrooms or any of the
Hmm.
studies, micro MDMA, microdosing,
Yeah.
LSD, all of these things that are happening from a therapy perspective and a medical
Yeah.
community perspective are trying to address the root,
Yeah.
the core issue, right? Because
Hmm.
you can't do surgery on your brain, like
Yeah.
to chop out memories and then put in a like skin graft. Like it's not like the rest of your body. So we have to
Mm,
attack it differently. My first question is I put a connection between what you're saying here,
mm,
and I don't know if I'm accurate on it,
mhm,
but you earlier said if people could just speak the very first
mm.
thought they had
Yeah.
without thinking, then later we talked about how people need to feel like they have a safe place. They are in a trusting relationship
Mhm,
with someone where they can actually open up and communicate some of these issues or insecurities. I feel like if people could learn to
mm,
just speak what first comes to your mind, you're instantly embracing vulnerability.
mm.
And it also fosters and creates that trust that you're looking for. But it takes a little bit of leap of faith. It takes a little bit of just hope that someone's not going to hurt you and that they're going to respect you and be someone that can help you through that honest, vulnerable, verbal expression of what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
Because I know people, I know I have close friends who do this.
Mm,
You ask a serious question, like
mm,
maybe they make a sly comment, but there's some truth behind it. And maybe you confront them and say, what, what's behind that? Like,
mm,
where's that really come from? What is your thought process behind it?
mm,
They don't respond right away. They think about, like, what they're gonna say, and that goes back to your tribal mentality. Well, subconscious human tribal mentality of getting kicked out versus staying in and conforming, I think, is what I was looking at when you were speaking. People conform to the tribe so they don't get
yeah.
kicked out, so they don't
Absolutely.
get ostracized.
Yeah.
And so people think too much about the responses to conform and not rough any feathers or conform to the image or society that they think these people they're speaking to have of them. And
Mhm.
so they get reserved and they hold. I put all that together while you were talking. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
off base here.
No, it's absolutely right because what we've been taught is we all have archetypally masculine and feminine within us. The feminine is if you think about the sex organs, it's the easiest way to think about it. So, feminine sex organs are hidden, they're mysterious. So, it's all the emotions, the feeling, it's receptivity, it's the feelingness inside of us, it's our internal world. The masculine sex organs are projective, they're giving, they're out there, they're, the things that you can see and it's tangible. And so when you're thinking about that, we both balance these within ourselves. And we all have our own unique expression of it, regardless of gender, regardless of any of that stuff. This is beyond that. This is our internal makeup. And so what we're looking at is when we can balance that divine feminine and the divine masculine together, we become more whole. So think of the yin yang symbol. There's the light
Mhm.
and the dark in the light, and they both fit together to create the whole. So that is the way that we look at the masculine and feminine aspects of self in terms of archetypally. Now, what we have been taught through thousands of years of separating God from us and needing to go through intermediaries to get to God, rather than being part of these tribes who worship nature, who worship the goddess, who understood the life and death cycles of the world, who planted their plants with the moon, all of that kind of stuff. All of a sudden, we got separated and it became this fear and brimstone. It was control through fear. And that's the society that we live in. We've been taught to demonize anything that is in that feminine realm. So our intuition has been demonized. It's just witchcraft. It's just this woo-woo bullshit. It's just, if you think of any time that you talk about your intuition, it's automatically dismissed. It's this, oh, whatever, where's your tangible evidence on that? And what we do is we elevate the idea of this logic and our thought process and mind is king and all of that. Now, in that, what we do is we get these initial inklings of intuition and we immediately go, oh, no, that's scary. That's wrong. That's woo-woo. That's not true. Let me think about this. Because we've been taught that mind is king, even though we've not been taught it consciously. This is our subconscious programming and it's the water we're all swimming in. So we get taught to demonize one and, revere the other. Whereas actually when the two work together, and so I might make a comment from that initial, intuitive brain, and you could ask me a question on it. I may then need to think about where that came from. Okay, well, what led my intuition to throw that out there for me? And I would go into this place of going, okay, so where does my intuition then lead me, or where does my thought process then lead me? Because I trust that if you ask me that question, all these little bits that are bubbling in my subconscious will chuck up the little answers of how I got to that conclusion through that intuition. Does that make sense?
Wow. Like, I don't know if the listeners are following along. I was tracking pretty good. I really was. I honestly was tracking you really good until, like, I don't know, maybe the GPS signal went out and I lost direction towards the end. But I don't know about the listeners. They may be asleep. Maybe you could, like, summarize that. Like, I think my takeaway is femininity and masculinity have a polarity to each other that amplifies the strength together that is greater than the individual
Mhm.
collective, but respectively individual energies.
Yes.
There's harmonization, there's amplification, and there's best balancing of those skills and unique
Mhm.
inherent abilities that each feminine or masculine role carries since birth.
Yes.
That's how I would
Completely
summarize it.
unrelated to gender. So yes, we all have these within
Totally
us.
unrelated.
Yes. So I
Now,
do need to really highlight that these days because it's all about the archetypal bit within us and everybody has it. So I identify as feminine, but I identify as a woman. I use she, her pronouns, but I have that divine masculine within me as well as the divine feminine. And when they are in balance, I am able to move through the world in a much better place than if I'm working from, my woundedness or from my, just my femininity or just that masculine aspect. When they're
okay.
blended, I can express better in the
Now,
world.
you're talking bigger than relationship.
Mm,
You're talking the individual has the ability to
yeah.
harmonize both of these.
Yes.
How do you do that? I'm taking it, born and identify as a woman,
Hmm.
and if you're looking to increase your masculinity within yourself to help compensate or balance out your femininity, what do you do?
So it's
Like you
about
personally?
balancing. So for me, I had that masculine aspect of myself leading for most of my life. I was working from that control and logic and rationality, and because I was taught that my emotions were unsafe, they were scary, I was too sensitive. And so I never got to balance that more feminine aspect of myself, archetypally speaking. So the archetype is the pinnacle of human behavior. That is what an archetype is. So when we're looking at the aspects in terms of divine feminine and divine masculine, it is the way that we can be at our best in those. A great way to visualize it is imagining a riverbank. Now, water is seen as the feminine aspect. It's flowing, it can be very destructive. It also is life giving. Now, if there is no
Like
riverbank,
I just wanna say this because
Mhm.
if that's your analogy, then femininity definitely got tsunamis all over the place.
Hell yeah. But again, if there's, without a riverbank, without something to contain it, without boundaries, without direction, it floods or it creates
Oh, yeah.
tsunamis. It's not
Right.
contained again. But the masculine creates that direction. It creates the flow. It creates, it allows then the feminine to bubble and rage, but also go into the little eddies. If you think about a stream going down, you've got the
Yeah.
rapids, you've got the calm bits, you've got the little bits off to the side, the little, I can't remember what they're called, estuaries or whatever it is. But you've got all the different types of water that are contained within that riverbank, and the riverbank gives it direction. So for you, when you're in your heightened emotions, that's your internal feminine raging. And when you put the container around it, whether it be your own container of, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to feel this, or I'm going to journal through it, or I'm going to meditate on this, or whatever it is, the tools that you use, that's you putting it into a container that then makes it safe to explore those emotions. You're balancing the two parts of yourself there. For me, when I'm working, for example, me doing the muscle testing is a masculine. It's looking for a physical response. The
Mm,
intuition and the information that I'm gaining is coming from the internal. So it's coming from the more feminine, but without one, I'm not getting to the other.
mm,
My business structure is the masculine aspect of my business. My voice is the more feminine part. It's what gives life
mm.
and meaning to the structures that I've put in place. So in everything we're doing, we are balancing these two aspects of ourselves.
What is the safer role to have higher focus and concentration on that leads to someone being, non-balanced? Is it the masculine or the femininity that people gravitate towards amplifying?
We need the balance of the two. We need to be like the yin yang symbol, where we have the light and the dark together, where we have the dark in the light and the light in the dark. So if you look into that symbol, the Chinese system was incredible to be able to put it in that version. That's what we're looking. We are looking to make ourselves as balanced as possible. We are looking
Yeah.
to make ourselves in harmony so that we're not fighting those different parts of ourselves, so that we're coming together and going, this is how I can most fully express myself in the world. So
Yeah.
again, we're almost going from this binary action of this is my divine feminine, this is my divine masculine, into the non duality, into the
Mm.
wholeness of those two being perfectly married.
Where do most people get it wrong?
Well, I know for me, I've balanced a lot of people who have been doing their feminine embodiment work, which is a big craze at the moment. But what they're doing often in that feminine embodiment is feeding and nourishing and learning how to bring out and express the divine feminine, but they're not working on their inner masculine at all. They're not working on the boundaries,
Mm.
the containers, the logic and organization of that. They're just working on the feminine. And so I've actually had to balance them to bring in more of that masculine. Now, the men's embodiment work that I've seen tends to be that more balanced. It's about men having that safe container to speak and to express and to emote more. And they're also doing it in that mateship type way And so for me, in some ways, I watch the work that men are doing in those, in those groups and communities. And I'm like, you guys have actually really got it well, because you're learning how to express safely your emotions and feelings, which is that internal state, into the external
Mm.
world. And you've also got these containers and this divinity around it, which I think is a beautifully balanced way to do the work. Um, and that's kind of what I try to bring to my practice. Is it's not necessarily about the binary of the feminine and masculine. It's about bringing the two together so that your body is in harmony. And that's why I look at it as an energetic congruence for that symphony orchestra, where we're trying to get all the parts within you to play the bit that they're supposed to play at the time they're supposed to play in the tune they're supposed to play it in.
Can you do this remote, or do you have to be physically there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I do it remotely is the same way that we're talking now. I tune into your energetic radio station, and I also then imagine sort of, I guess, throwing my energetic blanket over you. And so I'm reading what's going on in the field, but I end up muscle testing on myself. So
Can we
it'll
do this
be
real time? Let's do it
yeah.
right now. That'd be a cool podcast.
Well, first, I would want to state that whatever comes up is safe for you to explore in this place, because it can go a little bit crazy, obviously, depending on what you're wanting to
How
work on.
how long does it take for you to get a sample? Could we give the listeners a sample of what it is? Like, just total impromptu, like a couple quick questions? Or is it a solid hour that you need to go,
Look,
"Okay,
I
now I
usually do
understand
an
this."
answer. I usually do an hour, because of the fact that, you want to get an idea of what the person is moving away from, what they're moving towards, what they're wanting, all of that kind of stuff. But if you've got something, simple that we could look at balancing now, then I can certainly do it.
I think we should try
Yeah.
something.
Okay.
When I went through, deep betrayal and abandonment 2.5 years
Mhm.
ago, and from that point forward, I've always been clenching my leg muscles, like tightening my calf, and
Ooh.
it subconsciously comes. Like, typically, like, my ankle and my foot and my low leg, I tighten, and I can't get it to go away. Like,
Mhm.
it's like I've gone through all the stuff I listed earlier about trying to resolve this crap, but
Yeah.
the leg muscles still clench sometimes, and I
Mhm.
have not been able to figure out why.
Yes. So the first thing that came into my mind before I've even gotten to the books is there are four main muscles that are really talking to our adrenal system, so our triple warmer meridian. And they are your sartorius, your gastrocs, your soleus, and your gracilis. So
Okay.
they're four main leg muscles. Now, of those, two of those are in your calf, which are your gastrocs and your soleus.
Okay.
So immediately when I'm thinking about the fact that you've got this tightness through the back there, you're looking at wanting to hold yourself back, not fully move forward, because there's a safety issue there. So our adrenals are our fight and flight system, and
Mhm.
they're not feeling safe to turn off that sympathetic nervous system and go into your parasympathetic nervous system. And your parasympathetic nervous system is your rest, repair, and digest system. So it's really looking at you trying to hold your ground. Now, the other thing with your ankle is about flexibility. Now, if you're stepping into this new way of being and you don't know what's ahead of you, your ankles may not want to be as flexible as before, because that fear is holding them in place. Now, if I go into the adrenal stuff, there's actually specific sentences to do with our gastrocs. And got to see if I can find it now, because I'm working on memory. Okay, uh, so your sartorius winds up around your leg. So metaphysically, it's about you being wound up and not quite recognizing how you're being wound up. The soleus, which is the small muscle that goes down the back of the calf underneath your gastroc, it keeps you standing upright. And so it's like if you get any more stress being loaded into your system, it you're likely to fall over. You're not being able to keep yourself upright. Your gastrocs is your
It
sprinting
does
muscle.
Real quick, Amanda, does
Mm.
this have an impact to your L4, L5 low spine region?
That's going into something different. It may do.
Okay.
Um, when I go into lumbar, I'm often looking at that lack of support, so feeling unsupported. That's where metaphysically my brain goes to immediately. But again, I'm not looking at the exact information. I'm going off that intuition. But if you look at then the gastrocs, which are the big calf muscle at the top, that's your sprinting muscle. So it's almost like I've got no energy to keep moving forward. I'm done. I'm tapped out. There's that exhaustion there. I really can't sprint anymore. I've been on the move too long. I need to slow down. So it's like there's no extra spurts of energy left. So that's where your gastrocs will end up feeling the pinch. And then your gracilis is about keeping you stable when you're being on that lateral movement. Your gracilis keeps you stable. So this is about you feeling like you've been knocked sideways.
Huh.
So all of
Wow.
those muscles are being affected in that adrenal capacity.
Dude, I was totally knocked sideways and I am holding myself back out of fear.
Yeah. Okay, so if we go to the emotion that's stuck there, we're looking at the 5-element chart. So central governing fire, earth, metal, lung, large intestine, top, bottom, powerless, powerful. So how does the emotion of powerful relate to you feeling knocked sideways and not really being able to stand up? Were you feeling powerful at that time?
Powerful meaning powerful, secured in myself, my life, my environment. Like I had power and control over all that, or power in the sense that um, I had power over the culprit or over the over the other people involved. Which one is it?
Well, what would
Both?
be your first guess with power? Did you feel like you had too much power or not enough?
I think I had too much.
You had too much power. Okay. Say
Yeah.
more about that. How did you have too much power in that situation if you're feeling knocked sideways?
Oh, power of the situation. I had 0 power. I
There you
I thought
go.
it was related
Yeah.
to I thought it was related to my state of being at the time in my overall life and the harmony of my life and existence. But in that
Mm,
situation, I had 0 control and power.
yeah. So you weren't feeling powerful. And what you were desiring was to
No.
feel like you had power over that. Would that
Yes,
sound about right? Okay. So that was what
absolutely.
I was hearing from you. And so the emotion that's been stuck in those leg muscles and creating that adrenal response is about you feeling like you wanted more power and not having any. It's like it's been taken
Mm.
away by somebody else's decision. And so again, if you're not feeling powerful, do you think you're going to feel confident and secure moving forward into the unknown? Do you think your ankles will release and go, yeah, let's run into this, let's skip, let's, or do you
No,
think you might want to stand still for a little bit?
I think I'm trying to stand still a little, but my
Yeah.
body's like, "You need to go."
Yeah. So you've got this these two different energy systems. One's going, we need to stop and lick our wounds and rest. And one's going, soldier on, pull up your bootstraps, let's get on with it. So in that, you can see there's this action balanced with this desire for inaction. There's this desire for that hibernation, that inward facing move versus this. The bit that we've been told is we can outrun our stress. I remember we had an ad here in Australia for a cold medication that was, and the slogan was "Soldier on." It's like take 2 tablets, get back to work, you'll be right. And so
But
you've got this fight going on within your body.
I was just gonna say that. It's
Mm.
like everything is attacking our fear, everything is attacking our adrenal gland, and it's putting us in a hyper state of anxiety, and we're
Mhm.
seeing it every headline's about China, Ukraine, politicians, economy, money, and
Yeah.
it's always fear and afraid, and you should be the world's going to fall apart tomorrow, and it never does. I've been alive for 42 years, and none of those things have destroyed
Yeah.
me yet.
Yeah.
So, like, but that's what everything cries on, even your medication, the insurance cries upon that. People are afraid of catastrophes and getting sued, and so people go get lawyer insurance. Everything hits your fear.
I think we're just
Yeah,
constantly striving and running. And so
yeah.
it's again, how do we then, and this is why nature is such a big healer, because in nature, you don't have that. Because you don't
Right.
have your phone that is screaming that stuff in your ears. You're not constantly plugged into that matrix. And so again, if we're looking at where you're sitting at, if we look at that hypothalamic tolerance, you're in fight, flight, freeze, fragmentation. So you're actually in fragmentation. And fragmentation is where you're feeling like you're in pieces.
I I used some words the other day to a close friend of mine
Mhm.
to articulate in a vulnerable moment where I was feeling and where I was at. And the words that I used at that point, which was probably 7 days ago, was I feel like my heart has been taken and put in a blender and
Mhm.
chopped up into a million pieces and put back together, and I have barriers and walls compartmentalizing every aspect of my heart that are protecting itself in a little piece that is collectively part of this cottage cheese, the Swiss cheese, type of structure, but it's not optimal and it's extremely complex. But that's what I use to describe how I felt. And you just said something about me being feel like I'm in pieces.
Mm. Yeah. So again, and that's what's testing up in terms of that adrenal state is that fragmentation. And fragmentation can come in different ways. It can feel like we've left pieces of ourselves at different ages where trauma's happened, or it can feel that we, fall to pieces when things get stressful, or it can just feel
Yes.
like we can't find all the right pieces and put them together in the right way that makes it feel okay. So let's then check that heart. All right. So, um, because we're
Hey,
just doing this quickly. Yes?
you made me think of something that I really want to touch on. Earlier, you said that it
Mhm.
was like we are corporatized rats in a like I look at it like a rat wheel or rat race.
Yep.
And we really are brainwashed to think we consume
Mhm.
and we work and we keep up with everyone else.
Yep.
And so the game the let's see, the game show, reality TV show called The Amazing Race comes to mind.
Mhm. Yep.
And I look at it like each season is like your life. You have your starting point and your end point,
Mhm.
and we are racing through the nature, the journey, the sights, the experiences, the conversations, the love, the connection, the peaceful, serene moments to get to the next activity. Hurry
Yeah.
up and do it, take some pictures, post them, and then rush to the next one.
Yeah.
And we're literally sprinting that way through life. And our impatience and calmness and comfort within our own head and
Mm.
body is being eliminated as a result. And it's minimizing our ability to connect with people
Yeah.
and love. Okay, I'm
And
sorry.
it
That was
keeps
the
us
thought I had.
yeah, no, absolutely, and it keeps us feeding the machine. It keeps us feeding because what that is that's the pursuit of happiness. When I get this, I'll be happy. When I do this, I'll be happy. When this happens, I'll be happy. Rather than going, I'm happy right now. Today,
Yeah.
I am happy. Today, I am choosing happiness. Today, I am choosing to be in love with my partner, or I'm choosing to be in love with my life, or I'm choosing this. It's about you being in this idea. And again, we work on this idea in kinesiology of being in choice or no choice. When we're in no choice, we are just doing things out of that reactionary pattern. When we're in choice, we are making a conscious choice, a response to, not a reaction to. And so we're
Wow.
moving from a very different place when we are healed than when we are in this reactive. It's like something happens, we react, something happens, we react. Where's the responsiveness? And the responsiveness comes when our nervous system is calm, is clear, And where we can sit in that moment of, and this is why gratitude practice is so important. What can you be grateful for today? However, they've done research on gratitude whereby gratitude is much more powerful when you are telling others you are grateful for them and they are telling you you are great, they are grateful for you. That's where the
Mm.
gratitude is much more raised. If you think about a lot of people when they do their gratitude practice, it's, I'm so grateful for my house and my car and my, they'll list things that they're grateful for. And that's where, again, gratitude practice becomes a commodification. It's not about what are you truly grateful for. People tend to go towards some of the more materialistic things. And again, that's that conditioning because we've been taught that we will never be happy. And if you think about the way, I know we'd sort of mentioned at the beginning, perhaps don't go into religion too much, but you think of what it is. We suffer through this life to then end up dying and going to heaven where we will live in the land of milk and honey and won't everything be fabulous. Metaphorically and metaphysically, the idea actually is that we do this here on earth. That we die to the idea that we need to be a cog in this machine and we get reborn into the love and gratitude that exists here right now for us to exist in. And
Mm.
that's the
That's
idea of
deep.
heaven.
That's deep.
Yeah.
So in reality, well, it's similar to how I view God now. I look
Mm-hmm.
at God as being a power that is unseen, that connects us inherently through energy or
Mm.
light.
Yeah.
And the effect of multiple lights coming together, like in, let's say, a congregation or a worship or a ceremony of some sort, the amplification of that light and that love grows. It just
Mm.
continues to amplify.
Yeah.
It becomes a brighter spot. And if we had lenses to be able to magnify and determine the level of energy, positive or negative, in
Mhm.
people, we would literally see either different shades of light and darkness hovering around at various depths and complexity and brightnesses. It would be very nuanced. However, that energy in religion is God,
Mm.
I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when people have those uplifting feelings and moments, a lot of religions call it the Holy Ghost, the
Mm.
spirit, the life of God,
Yeah.
but that energy is there and God is much more complex. And I think the energy he possesses is so much more powerful than any of us could comprehend because we're literally like a creation of God. We embody a little bit of that energy and it can be amplified like through charity and love and sacrifice for others. Um, that's how I look at it. I don't think it's complex.
That's why my book is called Divine Messy Human, because at the core, we are all divine creatures. We are
Yeah.
all part of that God source energy, that universal wisdom, that infinite wisdom that created everything that we see, everything that we know, and everything that we don't know. It is that unlimited, universal source energy that is pure love and pure peace and pure joy and pure happiness and purity. And we are here in this 3D reality having a messy human experience. And so when people talk about love and light, I call bullshit on it because it's not just about love and light. If you are only going for love and light, you are denying half of your reality. The reality is in this plane, we will have heartbreak. We will suffer grief. We will suffer torment. We will suffer at some point. Now, if we can accept that messiness as part of our human experience, it has less of a hold on us because we don't have to fight it so much. We don't have to resist it and try and paper over the cracks and hold up this facade that our life is perfect when shit's falling apart behind the scenes. We can acknowledge, you know what, shit's falling apart. And I still have this divine part of myself that I can tap into and hold at the same time. For me, it's like an anchor in the tumultuousness that is life. And when we can acknowledge our divinity and accept our messiness, our human experience becomes so much easier.
Mm. That was beautiful. That was beautifully said, Amanda. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.
But what I do want to get to is actually seeing if we can pull some of the stress out of these ankles and feet and calves. So I
Oh,
haven't
for me,
forgotten
back
about
to
that.
that.
So
Thank you.
I want to get back
See,
to
I have
that
ADD. Yeah, you got to
because
help me. All right.
So you're actually holding this stress in a meridian. So let me just find. So it's actually being held in your kidney. And so our kidney meridian looks at our fears and phobias, but also our identity. So, in terms of this betrayal that you went through, how did that affect your identity?
Wow. This is already this is already really good. Like, it's already effective. You could
Mhm.
have asked about anything, but the I feel like this will be deep, but I feel like I have died and been reborn.
Yeah. Yeah.
I literally feel like a different person. I feel like a previous part of me no longer exists.
Hmm. Yeah. So, in the healing journey, we go through a lot of deaths and rebirths, and
Mhm.
people are so afraid of death, and yet everything dies. So if you think
Yes.
about when you have an in breath, that's your feminine breath because it's moving in. The masculine breath is the out breath. Okay. So again, we need the balance of masculine and feminine to be whole. But the death of the in breath is the birth of the out breath. And the death of the out breath is the birth of the in breath. So we are constantly doing this death and rebirth.
Well,
Now,
cells die sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
don't
yeah,
cells die daily? How many cells die each day and
yeah.
get recreated?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And when you think about it in terms of projects, your project goes through the birth cycle. You have the fertile part where you're coming up with the idea, that fecundity of welcoming in the idea, and then you're developing that idea and you're growing it within yourself, and then you bring it to maturity, you birth it out into the world, and then it's killed off, it's finished.
Mhm.
And so
Wow.
it's the same as the birth process, and it's like you're developing a fetus in the womb and you're going through that is your project, and then you birth it into the world and it's done. It's
So what
dead.
you're really saying is, like, change is inherently part of our human existence and experience
Yep.
because these big pivotal moments that
Mhm.
we may experience that may be trauma, betrayal,
Yep.
whatever, abandonment, those moments are significant,
Mhm.
right? However, what you're describing is we constantly are doing this with a variety of things at different magnitudes throughout our existence. So therefore, all we have or another label for life would be growth.
Mm.
We are growing.
Yeah, and if you look at the plants, they go through their own different seasons. Think about, your deciduous trees, they're the ones that drop the leaves, aren't they? So, they go through a bit where they shed their leaves, that then mulches into the soil to create this beautiful nutrients for then new growth to happen.
It becomes a leaf again.
Yeah. And then they regrow and they go
Or
through that cycle.
not necessarily a leaf for a leaf,
Mm.
but a leaf feeds every aspect of the tree, the trunk, the sap, the soil, the
Yep.
strength, the roots, the water, movement systems, the
Mhm.
veins, everything, and new leaves and buds and flowers.
Yep.
So it
And
actually
also
becomes
anything
part
that
of
grows
all of it.
underneath the tree. So,
Yeah,
the
it's
grass
true.
is growing around the tree. And so, again, if you think about it in that sense, everything that dies gets to be mulched into that soil for then your new sprouts of growth to happen. Now, in this, one of the most important parts of our healing journey is grief. We need to grieve. So, when, my marriage ended, I needed to grieve the person I knew I could have been in that marriage, the person I was in that marriage, the person he could have been in the marriage, my expectations of the marriage, the fact that I thought it would last forever and it clearly didn't. There were all these different aspects. The fact that I'd broken up the family home. Like I had to grieve all these different aspects of that to be able to truly move forward and truly heal. So for you, yes, that part of you has died. So which aspects of that do you need to grieve? Is it the role that you played with that person? Is it the role you wish you could have played? Is it the role that you wish they could have played? Is it all of these different things, which are usually tied to expectation and also partially reality. It's about grieving those different aspects and going, okay, you served me. What gifts did this give me? And recognizing the light in the shadow. So, yes, this was a dark time. You were feeling betrayed, but what gifts did that give you? You've been able rebirth into a new iteration of yourself. So it's looking at how that created the fertilizer for these new shoots of growth that you're now going in, and also grieving that past part of you.
Okay, question. Like, I'm
Yes.
processing this because it's so freaky spot on that it's scary, but, um, it's funny. I feel like we're like an infomercial selling kinesiology, and we're like, we're like actors and we're making this up. People are gonna be like, "This ain't real. Come on, they scripted that crap." I guarantee you I didn't script any of this. Like, you can't make this shit up. Okay, but let me be heard here. Let
Mhm.
me
Yeah.
process this and say what I wanna say. Um, what if you have there's parts that have died,
Mhm.
but you are still holding on to that, and that is causing other symptoms to surface because you are not embracing the fact that that is dead. And so the rumination, the potentials, hypotheticals, maybe you have thought you mourned properly, but
Mhm.
you are still having some connections to those. What is that?
So I would often be then questioning whether you're being connected to that event or if this is actually linked to an event, say from childhood, and that you're actually needing to grieve that rather than what you're working on now. So sometimes we because we're using the conscious mind, we think it's one thing, but the subconscious is feeding us into a different part. And
Mm.
and that's where we need to do the inner child work, the inner teenage work so that we can clear a lot of those traumas. So the
What?
yes, go.
Sorry. Go.
Sorry.
No, no, no. Sorry.
No,
I
you
got
asked the
excited.
question.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yes.
No, you keep going.
So what I was gonna say is so for you, for betrayal, we'll use betrayal as the example. The very first time in your life you felt betrayal, there was this split in you. Now, some people call it inner children, some people call it parts. So you effectively split in two. Now, one of those bits, because it wasn't appropriate for you to show the hurt and the tears and all of that kind of stuff that you felt when you were first betrayed, you put that in behind a wall in your subconscious. And what you do is in this other part that was betrayed, you put on this facade of, I'm okay, put on my boots, pull up my bootstraps, get on with it, move on. So you're denying and suppressing this little part of you. And then the next time you feel betrayed, you're doing the same thing and the same thing. So you end up with all of these different parts or it hurt inner children behind this wall in your subconscious. But every time then you're feeling betrayed and you're wanting to go into that reaction of, hang on, this hurts. I don't like being hurt. Some of these bits that are sitting behind the wall in the subconscious come out because they want to be heard. And so this is why you notice the more often you're feeling certain feelings, the more explosive often your reaction is. When I was in my marriage, I put up with the abuse for a long time. But then eventually it got to a point where there were too many pieces behind that wall and they were all wanting to be heard. And so they would then explode out. I would be completely unresourceful. I would be reactive. I would get angry. I would shout. I would scream because I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. And all of these parts that I'd shut away that hadn't been seen or heard were like, let me have my say. And then I'd have to shove them all back into that bit of my subconscious and carry on as though things are okay. So we need to heal as many of those parts of ourselves as we can so that they're
Okay.
not coming out to show unresourceful behaviors.
This is freaky. Keep going. Like, you're honing in to some kind of bullseye here. Can you keep your I feel like you got radar and you're in the middle of the ocean. You're like, it's coming from China. Oh, I think it's in this region of China. Oh, it might be in this province. Like, you're honing in here. So can we find the door number, please?
So, yeah. But that's kind of what's going on is we've got to go back and we've got
You're
to
accurate.
heal those aspects of self that are wanting to be heard and seen and given the resources. So this is like the bit where we need to grow into our adult self, our mature adult self. And we need to parent those parts of us who are feeling hurt and betrayed. So we need to be the parent for those inner parts. And that can be taught, obviously, in much more in depth sessions. But
So,
yeah, that's kind of where we're
Amanda,
going.
I hit like session 9 on
Mhm,
EMDR, maybe 12, somewhere around there. And all of a sudden, weird crap started showing up from
mhm.
childhood.
Yep.
I'm like, wait a minute. Why am I thinking of something when I was 5? Why am
Yeah.
I thinking of this event when I was
Mhm,
12?
mhm,
Um, and then the more I went, the more I continued down that path, more and more started surfacing in different areas,
mhm,
different timelines. It was a little freaky. And I wonder if this is kind of similar, where you start focusing in on, hey, this was the recent that you
mhm.
had, the recent
Yeah.
betrayal, but there it's being re-triggered and amplified because there's stuff behind it
Mm,
to make it bigger, like a snowball of some sort. You have to dissect
mm,
it.
yeah. So a trigger or an activation is just one of those pieces of you behind that wall going, "Ooh, that ugh, that really hit home." And then that piece is
Mm,
coming out and reacting. So the
mm,
more of them that we heal, the less reactive we become and the more responsive we can become.
mm.
And so, yeah, it is a bit of a process and it, it takes time,
What
but also just so incredible.
I think it so far is freaky incredible, like, because this is so accurate. Like, that's where I'm having my pain, my muscle tensions, like, that
Mhm.
started that's the symptom. You
Yeah.
went from, "What are your symptoms?"
Mhm.
to all the way down into, "I have one, we knew I didn't have control over something."
Mhm.
Like, that's spot on,
Yeah.
100%. Everyone would agree if I shared what it was. Um, 2, you went further than that, and you went all the way down into the fact that what did you call it? I'm forgetting here. You had some word for it. Childhood betrayal?
Mhm.
Is that what you said?
Yeah. We were talking about betrayal.
Oh, before that, what I was thinking of, the
Mm.
compartmentalized and
Yeah.
chopped
The
apart,
parts or inner children,
the
depending on
parts.
what you want to call them. Yeah.
And that's what I feel like I already described that to a friend of mine like a
Mm.
week ago.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been chopped up and I have these compartments and they're not
Yeah.
talking to each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the
So that
idea
was
that
freaky.
the idea or what I consider healing is going back and collecting all those pieces of you, bringing them back into the fold. So all of those
Yeah.
unresourceful pieces, all of those bits of you that has ever been unresourceful have been doing the best they can with the tools they have at the time. Now, if we can recognize that everything you have done in your life, whether good, bad, or indifferent, was to keep you in the tribe, to keep you accepted, to keep you loved, to keep you there, to keep you safe, we can have more love and compassion for those parts of ourselves. Now,
I
as
love
we
it.
can bring them into the whole with love and compassion, they don't need to fight so much. We're accepting them
Yeah.
and we're loving them and we're saying, "You were doing the best you could, my darling." It's like talking to a child, "Darling, you were doing the best you could. At 2 years old, how could you have had those skills?" Now, I'm an adult. In case you haven't noticed, I'm, a 45-year-old woman. I say that to my inner child. In case you haven't noticed, I'm actually a 45-year-old woman, and it's now my job to protect you. So you don't need to behave in this way anymore because I've got this and I've got the skills and
Mm,
tools. So you tell me
it's
what you
beautiful.
need and I can provide that for you. And that's the way we talk to our inner children, our inner teens. A lot of our unresourceful anger is our angry teenager standing in front of the hurt child going, "I'm going to rip your head off." Because
Yeah.
anger feels like we are mobilizing our resources. And so
Yep.
rather than feeling hurt, rather than feeling betrayed, rather than feeling some of those big feelings, disrespected, unloved, rather than feeling those, we'll go to anger because we feel like we're doing something.
Wow. That's so crazy. Like, it's so relatable. It's freaky. It really
Mm,
is. It's actually pretty cool stuff. All
mm,
right, I have a question for you.
yes.
Let's say people are listening to this
Mhm.
and they don't recognize that they even have anything. Like, what are some ways for people to recognize, hey, I probably should go and look at this, or I am experiencing these symptoms. Maybe it is something I should go and do kinesiology with. Give me some rundowns on that.
For me, if you are not feeling vital and healthy and well, then there's something going on. to be honest. If we are not feeling like we are in tip-top health and shape, then there is something going on. If we are emotionally eating, if we are stressed, if we are angry a lot, if we are expressing our anger at other people a lot, if we are sad a lot, if anything is out of balance, then there's something not quite right.
Hey,
Because we should
I love it.
feel happy and healthy and, amongst the tumultuousness. It's that divine messy part. It's yes, things are falling apart right now. And I still know that there is a bigger power out there that I can connect to that makes this messiness feel slightly less messy.
I love it all.
Quickly, I want to get you to do the correction as well. So I want you
Well,
to rub.
crap. Let's freaking, I didn't know when we end this thing. Let's get it done, Amanda. Let's do it.
So what I want you to do is from your belly button, go up and out 1 inch either side. So into a
With 2
triangle.
fingers.
So yeah, 2 fingers either side, and they might be
Okay.
quite sore. They're called your kidney neurolymphatic points. So it's basically clearing out the shit because that's what our lymphatic system does. But these speak to our kidney meridians. So just rub those points 1 inch up and out from your belly button. I don't know about you, but mine are.
Do I push in pretty good? How much pressure?
Oh, look, for me, I push in really hard. You don't have to. I tend to just because I like kind of feeling that.
I am feeling that.
So just rub it until it feels slightly less
Like
painful.
now or every day or?
Just for now. You're just clearing this one thing through.
Okay.
Now you will notice often as it releases, you might do a big deep breath or you might yawn. I know some people burp. There's different ways of releasing. So I just saw that big breath then. Now the other point is at the back. So where your rib end, just rub either side of your spine. So I tend to do it with my fist because then I know I'm not, and it's easier on yourself. So
Okay, I found it.
Yeah. So just rub that either side. Again, you see that's how I cough. That also gets rid of energy. Oh yeah. And then I felt that big sigh come out. So I know that mine's balanced. So wait until you get some kind of release. Usually I find it comes through the breath somehow. And so that's your front and your back neurolymphatic points. So now if I go back and test what we had before, which was your hypothalamic tolerance of fragmentation, not feeling powerful, and that emotion of betrayal, it's not testing up. So see how your calves and ankles feel after this, because that would have released some of the stress and tension.
I mean, like, honestly, it does feel a little better. Like my low back was tight when I even started this interview. And I'm like, usually when I sit back and sit up, I'm like, oh, like it's like when my muscles are kicking in and relieving the spine, the compression of my 2 vertebrae.
Yes.
You're like, oh, that transition hurts. But when I sit back now and I just relax and I sit up, my abs properly engage and I don't feel that. That's pretty cool. That was pretty sudden. I'll give you that, but I still think it's voodoo witch magic here. What's going on? It's actually pretty cool. Like some of these points are really powerful. Okay, now is that the correction or do you have more stuff for me?
That was the correction. Yeah.
Because it feels good.
Yeah.
Like,
so they were your neurolymphatic points for your kidney meridian. And so again, it's releasing, if you think about neurolymphatic, lymphatics is the sewage system of the body and neuro is the brain. So it's like we're clearing out some of that toxic shit that's in the body.
Yeah, seriously. Literally toxic shit you need to drain out.
Yeah.
It's negativity. That's cool. Okay. Now, can you work with people globally?
Yes. Yeah. So I've got clients at the moment.
Reach you?
I've got clients at the moment in the UK, in Vietnam, in different parts of Australia, and I've got one in the US at the moment as well. So again, if people can't find, the right times to book in via my booking system, they can just shoot me an email and we can always work something out because, I work from early in the morning until not that late at night because I'm usually up early. But if they look at amandakate.com.au and there's all the links to my socials and everything there.
That's awesome, Amanda. You're full-time? You're doing this full-time?
Yeah.
And that's so cool. Like, I love it. Because I would much rather do work like that and helping people because you have, like, really joyful, healing, growth that happens with everyone,
Yeah.
and I can imagine that being really uplifting and empowering and enlightening, and it's love, and you're helping people grow, like, that's a cool profession.
Yeah. It's amazing. Look, I love it. And, especially during the lockdowns when I wasn't sure if my business would survive. And even over the last 12 months, as we've opened, more and more. And, there's still been times where I'm like, am I going to be able to survive doing this? Do I need to get more work?
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing anything else. I love it. And I love being able to help people. I love being able, and the wide, varied ways that I work. It's not always unpacking trauma. It's also looking at getting people to their next stage of growth. So it's not just about the trauma repatterning and things like that. It's also about, I had a businessman in, he's been seeing me for a number of years now, could not get to that seven-figure mark in his sales. And so we just worked on clearing what was standing in the way, got him over that mark, and then he realized, oh, that actually wasn't the problem at all. So now we're working on the next thing. But I had another woman who needed to manifest, I think it was 6 grand so that she could publish a book that she was desperate to publish. And again, we cleared the blocks that were standing in the way of that. And I still remember her coming up to me going, oh my God, you'll never guess. I manifested 6.5K.
Wow.
There was something that happened in in an insurance stuff. There's other people who, obviously it's not money related, but there's so many different ways of being able to use this because it's tapping into that energetic system and it's looking at not just where you've been or where you are, it's also about where you want to go and how you want to get there.
I love it. This is so cool, and I'm looking at your website, I'm like, "How much are these sessions?" Do you publish that, or is it kinda ad hoc depending on
Yeah,
how
no,
how many
well,
se
look, it'll depend on what type of session, but I do have my regular kinesiology sessions up there that you can book. If people want to talk more about, I guess the process and what's right for them, then I definitely suggest the 20-minute call because, it'll depend on how intensely you want to work as well. Because
Mhm.
it is great doing an ad hoc session, but if you're committed to change and if you want to really see the result, it is best to go, right, for 3 months, I'm going to work weekly or for, whatever it is. And we can then work it out, right? How quickly do you want to see these changes? How much do you want to change? You know, where do you want to go
Yeah,
to? And then we
a
can
lot of
mix things
factors.
together. Yeah. And so again, some people might do 2 hourly sessions to start with for the first 5 or 6 weeks as we, I guess get the bobcat in and do bit of clearing. And
Yeah,
then we can, go down to hourly sessions for however long to mix and match. It really
I
depends
love
on
it.
what people are wanting.
I love it all. Amanda, you're amazing. I just
Oh,
wanna
thank you.
compliment you for a minute before we end. But, like, your energy is so radiating and powerful, like, you have a genuine level of, I think, balance and harmonious, like, vibes that portray, and I can tell that this works for you, and
Mm.
it has healed you, and you're a special person because of that, and I imagine that you're also touching a lot of other people's lives, and you articulate this in such a very, very awesome Australian female accent. You also have a way of communicating that is so relatable, but yet when you need to, you get super sophisticated, so you're very well balanced, and I super appreciate you coming on this show.
Oh, thank you so much. That is received with thanks and gratitude. It's just beautiful to hear. So I will take that and receive that. Yeah, beautifully. But thank you so much for
You're
having me
welcome.
on. It's been wonderful. And I've loved the fact that we got to actually do a bit of a mini session with you. So that was
I
great.
think it was so cool. Thank you very much.
You'll have to let me know how your calves are feeling.
I will.